When we look at business strategy, we typically address the midterm time horizon, the 3 to 5 years. You recommend, though, that we should also explore what lies before and beyond this time frame to complement the strategy, to look at with foresight and signaling. So perhaps you can unpack those two.
When you talk about strategy with organizations, what they typically think about is, as you said, it's like a 3 to 5 year time horizon. It's relatively close. It doesn't appear too far away, so you can wrap your head around it. And it's not like, a 3 month plan that is basically the moment you talk about it, it's about time to move it into action. Otherwise, that time is already gone. So that is strategy, 3 to 5 years. Shorter, that's what signaling does. Signaling is less strategic. It's more tactical, more operations focused. It's meant to identify short-term threats to your business continuity, if you want. But those threats are so large that they do have an impact if you do not take care of them. A great example is our organizations that understand the geopolitical landscape, right? So when we talk about geopolitical threats and impacts to supply chains, for example, through wars or other conflicts, there are organizations that are really fast in understanding what does it mean if Russia invades Ukraine? What does that mean, right? So, and we've all seen the conversations around grain supply for especially Africa that is heavily impacted by that conflict. So some companies understand that when they read something in the news, that they need to take this thought or this information and do something with it and think about how does that impact us short term. Many organizations do it. Many organizations don't do it. The issue is if you don't do it and there is a big impact, it can derail your business in such scope that there is no business left afterwards. It can be so critical for you that you don't survive that shock. We've all seen thousands of businesses just disappear in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. They were not fast enough to change their business model. They were not fast enough to adopt. Very often, these organizations were not particularly healthy in the first place. And the shifts that came through the pandemic were just the coffin, the nail in the coffin, right? So that's about signaling. When we talk about the longer term, when we talk about strategic foresight, that is an entirely different concept than strategy as such. When we talk about strategy, we talk about, what Roger Martin said, strategy is the choices that you make to win in your chosen marketplace, where the opposite of those choices aren't plain stupid. That's how we define strategy, right? When we talk about foresight, we really talk about something that you cannot plan. It's impossible. It's so far ahead. We're talking about 10 years from now. You need to imagine how the world might look like, how your consumers, your customers that you have today might consume your services or related services in the future. And the interesting thing is this is nothing that happens in the boardrooms, right? Strategy often happens in a boardroom. It's the top executives that make those decisions, that make those choices to win in your chosen marketplace. When we talk about foresight, that's not the executives anymore. That only organizations that democratize the strategy process as such do proper foresight. What they do is they have teams of people who create scenarios about how the world might look like at some point in the future. They crunch demographics data with, geopolitical outlooks. And then they also throw like industry-specific foresight into the mix. And out of that, they create scenarios, kind of big bets. And then they test those bets. And what they sometimes realize that, hey, wait a minute, I guess we're onto something here. Like weird stuff. But sometimes those weird ideas trigger really great ideas. Foresight is so important for especially larger organizations because they can completely change the landscape in which you operate.